call. Okay.
I'll be watching.
Okay.
So if it hit it.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. It is 6:03 p.m. on Tuesday, July 27th, 2021. I'd like to call the meeting of the Peoria City Council to order. I'd like to welcome everyone in our City Council chambers, as well as Brady Johnson and our listening audience at WCBU. I'd also like to welcome the audience watching cable channel 22. Madam Clerk, the council mics are open. Would you please call the roll?
Mayor Ali,
Present.
Councilmember Allen,
Present.
Councilmember Sear,
Here.
Councilmember Grayup,
Here.
Councilmember Jackson, Councilmember Jensen, Councilmember Kelly,
Here.
Councilmember Euler, Councilmember Riggenbach,
Here.
and Councilmember Valpula.
Here.
We have a quorum present, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. A notice was received by a member of the City Council in accordance with rules established in Ordinance number 16,142, and the member would be deemed authorized to attend the meeting electronically unless a motion objecting to the member's electronic attendance is made, seconded, and approved by 2/3 of the members of the City Council physically present at the meeting. If no such motion is made and seconded, then the request by the member to attend electronically shall be deemed approved by the council and the presiding officer, and shall declare the requesting member present. That council member is Councilmember Ruckriegel.
Councilmember Ruckriegel,
Here, present.
Okay, thank you. There's no objections to that. Thank you. I'd like to ask you to please join me and stand for a moment of silent prayer or silent reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have two proclamations this evening. The first is Great Neighbor Appreciation Week, and I'd like to ask Joe Doolin, Assistant Community Development Director, and Kaylee Dre, Neighborhood Enhancement Coordinator, to join us at the podium. Whereas the City of Peoria Community Development Department aims to create a safer, cleaner, and more connected Peoria, and whereas neighborhoods play an integral part in maintaining and promoting a high quality of life in the city of Peoria, and whereas in a world where technology and our ability to travel across great distances has caused a loosening in the bonds of our local community, it is of the utmost importance to honor our neighbors who go above and beyond to forge a sense of community in an increasingly polarized world. And whereas the City of Peoria Community Development Department is hosting the 6th annual Great Neighbor Appreciation Week, with a week-long celebration to encourage residents to reach out to their neighbors, to create new friends, and to express gratitude to those who make our neighbors and our city a great place to live. And whereas Great Neighbor Appreciation Week provides Peoria residents with opportunities to show their appreciation for their neighbors and be reminded of what it means to be a great neighbor. Now, therefore, I, Rita Ali, Mayor of the City of Peoria, Illinois, and on behalf of the Peoria City Council, do hereby proclaim the week of July 24th through July 30th, 2021 to be Great Neighbor Appreciation Week in Peoria, Illinois. Mr. Doolin, Ms. Dre.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for the proclamation. Thank you also for all the support you guys have given us this week with our programs. Great Neighbor Appreciation Week was something we started 6 years ago as an initiative in the Community Development Department. About 6.5 years ago, we started a new initiative where we hand out good job door hangers on properties that just do a good job in our community. And I've told this story before, but it's one of my favorites, so I'm going to say it again. We started a new initiative where properties that are just doing a good job, we put a good job door hanger just to let them know we appreciate their work they're doing. And I got a call on my phone. It's from a lady up in the East Bluff. Our code enforcement inspector at the time, who's now our supervisor, left a good job door hanger, and she left me a voicemail. And she was very teary-eyed on her voicemail, saying she got home from work, a rough day. She'd been taking care of the property for the last year or so. And her husband always took a lot of pride of ownership of their yard, and he had passed away about a year ago, and it's something that meant a lot to her to keep it up. And she said she came home from work and saw this notice on the door and was mad. What does the city want me to do? What's the city picking on? And she went and saw the good job door hanger on the door and just really appreciated that we were appreciating her efforts. So out of that, it created a week where staff in the Community Development Department and all across the departments really just appreciate the citizens who make our jobs easy, make our jobs worthwhile, make us appreciate everything we do every day to serve what they do. So that's where this week is, and we've had a great week so far. I'm going to let Kaylee talk to you about the activities that we've done so far, and then what we still have to come, and then I'll wrap it up with a few more words.
Thanks, Joe. As Joe mentioned, we've had a great week so far with Great Neighbor Appreciation Week. We had 2 successful cleanups yesterday, one in the South Side and one in the East Bluff. We had great turnout. Both community members and volunteers from outside of the neighborhoods came just to kind of show pride in where they live, because we all live in Peoria. If you missed our events yesterday, we do have a few more coming up. We have a cleanup in the 5th District from 4 o'clock to 5 p.m. tomorrow, July 28th. We're meeting at 8800 North Allen Road, so that's the Elevate Trampoline Park. In that parking lot, we're just kind of cleaning up a commercial corridor. Then on Thursday, July 29th, we have a downtown cleanup at Fulton Plaza. We're working with Peoria Innovation Alliance and other community members to show appreciation for our local business owners. It's been a tough year, no doubt, with COVID, so we're just kind of taking 2 hours out of our day over the lunch hour to clean up downtown. And we also have a Coffee with Code event at Thursday from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. That's at the Gateway Building. So that's an opportunity for anyone who has questions, concerns about code enforcement in their neighborhood, doesn't know who they need to talk to. They can come down to the Gateway Building, talk to us. We will have coffee, we will have cookies and other desserts for them. So hopefully that'll foster some great community discussions. Then on Friday, we have a cleanup in the 4th District from 8:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. at 3725 Sterling. Then we round out the week with a West Bluff cleanup from 3 to 4 at 734 West Main Street. So we will just be at the city parking lot on West Main.
Thank you, Joe and Kaylee.
I do want to mention one more thing. I would be remiss with tonight being Director Black's last council meeting. Just on behalf of the Community Development Department staff, we want to wish him a very happy retirement. We greatly appreciate the leadership he gave to our department, and we're Ross and I are both very proud of the staff that we have every day. Their commitment to the city this week is especially comes true. With yesterday during the cleanups, we had about 23 different community development staff members there. And Ross sets the example for us. He was at both of them. He'll be greatly missed, and we really appreciate and wish him the best of luck in retirement.
Well, we join the staff in thanking Director Ross for all of his great contributions to the city of Peoria. And he promised, he said, you know, I may be retiring, but I'm not going away. I'm still going to live here. I'm still going to be a part of this community and contribute as much as I can. And I believe that. So much appreciated. And all your efforts in community development with this great Neighbor Appreciation Week. Thank you very much. Our next proclamation is the 100th birthday of Mrs. Elise Allen. And I'd like to, this was brought forth by Councilmember Jackson. I'd like for her to join the daughters of Mrs. Allen, Angela, Henry, and Barbara Randall. Whereas longevity of life is a blessing for an individual and for a community which benefits from the knowledge, creativity, and experiences this individual brings to all. And whereas Elise Ford Allen was born in Peoria, Illinois, on July 29, 1921, to Florence Harrison and Dr. Cecil Bruce Ford, she was destined to make history. Her third great-grandfather, Wes Ford, a freed slave, founded Gum Springs in Virginia in 1833. It is the oldest African-American community in Fairfax County. Her grandfather, Major George W. Ford, was an original member of the legendary 10th Cavalry known as the Buffalo Soldiers, and her father was the first black dentist in Peoria, and her mother was a well-known seamstress. And whereas Elise married James O. Allen in 1939, and the couple had 11 children, they started the successful Allen Printing Company, renaming it the Traveler Printing and Publishing Company in 1960. She felt that the city of Peoria needed a newspaper that focused on African American issues, concerns, and accomplishments. The Traveler Weekly newspaper began in 1966, and it gave her a vehicle to voice her thoughts and concerns. The newspaper continues to focus on the true principles of democracy and to keep it a living reality to all Americans without regard to race, color, or creed. And whereas Elise is a woman of many firsts, Elise became the first African American woman in Illinois to edit and publish a newspaper. In 1973, she ran for mayor. She was the first woman and African American candidate running to bring to light the plights of the disadvantaged and poor in Peoria who had no voice. She has been honored with numerous awards for her lifetime of service to the community. And whereas Elise Ford Allen has spent her life fighting for equality and bringing discrimination to light, she is known for saying, "We not only want to take part in solving our own problems, but also in making the true principles of democracy a living reality to all Americans without regard to race, color, or creed. The dignity of the individual and their civil rights must be defended always." The real test today is the ability to and desire of all of us to meet Americans as Americans and all people as equals. Now, therefore, I, Rita Ali, Mayor of the City of Peoria, Illinois, and inspired by Elise Allen Ford, and on behalf of the Peoria City Council, do hereby recognize the accomplishments and celebrate the 100th birthday of Elise Ford Allen in Peoria, Illinois.
Good evening, Mayor Ali and City Council members. It is an honor and a privilege to stand here today and accept this proclamation on behalf of my mother, Elise Ford Allen. As you can imagine, 100 years, the things that she saw, the things that she's witnessed, She grew up on was born and was raised on Gale Avenue, the 2nd District today. However, at age 16, she fell in love with a young man from the 1st District. So we have roots in both areas, but I just want to say thank you. A lot has changed during her course of her life, but one thing has remained the same, and that's her love for Peoria. Thank you so much.
It's beautiful. Thank you. Councilmember Jackson? Yes, you're very welcome. Okay. Madam Clerk?
We are at the minutes.
Councilmember Allen?
Madam Mayor, I move to approve the minutes of the joint city council and town board meeting held on July 13th, 2021 as printed.
The second, Councilmember Jensen, please. Thank you. Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Ruckriegel?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
We are at the consent agenda. 21-211 is a communication from the Mayor and Corporation Council with a request to approve the declaration of local state of emergency. 21-212 is a communication from the City Manager and Director of Public Works with a request for the following. A, to approve the cost proposal from Empowering People, Inspiring Capabilities, and award a contract for $315,886.39 with an additional authorization and contingency of $15,794.32 for a total award amount of $331,680.71 for the downtown trash collection project. And item B is to adopt an ordinance amending the City of Peoria 2021 revised annual budget relating to the use of fund balance in the refuge collection fund to increase contractual cost as a result of an increase in the EPIC contract in the amount of $11,815. 21-213 is a communication from the City Manager and the Community Development Director with a request to approve a $220,000 in Housing and Urban Development Community Housing Development Organization funds for Habitat for Humanity Greater Peoria for the construction of 2 new affordable single-family owner-occupied homes located at 600 East Illinois Avenue and East Illinois Avenue. 21-214 is a communication from the City Manager and Director of Public Works with a request for the following. A, to approve a local agency agreement for federal participation with the Illinois Department of Transportation requesting 80% ITEP federal funding in the amount not to exceed $191,381 for the sidewalk install ITEP grant fiscal year 2021 Willow Knolls Road. And B, approve a resolution authorizing the city's estimated minimum local agency funding match in the amount of $47,846, subject to the approval of IDOT for the sidewalk install ITEP grant FY 2021 Willow Knolls Road. 21-215 is a communication with a request for the following. A, to approve the Third Amendment to the landfill agreement, and B, approve the permanent easement and license agreement with Robert D. Carmen Grantor Trust and Judith A. Carmen Grantor Trust. 21-216 is a communication with a request to approve a resolution authorizing named banks to honor checks, drafts, etc. of the City of Peoria, authorizing the City Treasurer, City Manager, and Finance Director Comptroller to accept and release securities for safekeeping held by a third party, and repeal Resolution Number 21-119. 21-196 is a communication with a request to concur with a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff to adopt an ordinance amending Appendix A, the Unified Development Code, related to amendments to the permitted use table related to permitted and special uses. 21-217 is a communication with a request for the following. A, to approve a substantial amendment to the 2020-2024 Consolidated Plan for submittal to the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And B, adopt an ordinance amending the City of Peoria 2021 revised annual budget relating to the Community Development Block Grant Fund to recognize the receipt of additional grant funds from the Department of Housing and Urban Development to prevent, prepare for, or respond to COVID-19 in the amount of $808,791. 21-218 is a communication with a request to adopt an ordinance revising Class K liquor licenses for catering. 21-219 is an appointment by Mayor Ali to the Peoria Public Library Board of Trustees with a request to concur of Roberta Parks. 21-220 are appointments by Mayor Ali to the Advisory Committee on Police and Community Relations with a request to concur of Alexander Sierra, Catherine Shadle, Lee Lang, and Karen Wilson. 21-221 is an appointment by Mayor Ali to the Downtown Advisory Commission with a request to concur of Michaela Sluter. 21-222 is an appointment by Mayor Ali to the East Village Growth Cell Committee with a request to concur of Brian Levingood. 21-223 is an appointment by Mayor Ali to the Transportation Commission with a request to concur of Jared Fox. 21-224 is an appointment by Mayor Ali to the Public Arts Advisory Commission with a request to concur of Betty Jane Lawrence. 21-225 is an appointment by Mayor Ali to the Fair Employment Commission with a request to concur of Ronald Ruffin. 21-226, and there is a handout with a revised communication on your desk. It's an appointment by Mayor Ali to the Peoria Housing Authority with a request to concur of Latasha Perry. 21-227 is a communication from the City Manager, Director of Public Works, and Finance Director Comptroller with a request to receive and file a report from the Illinois Department of Transportation titled Documentation Review Number 74. And that completes our consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Are there any items to remove from consent? Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 21-226, please.
Councilmember Riggenbach.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item 21-222.
Thank you. Councilmember Graham.
220.
Thank you. Councilmember Jensen.
196 and 217.
That was 217, and what was the other?
196.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Councilmember Seer.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move to approve the balance of the consent agenda.
Can I get a second? Councilmember Riggenbach. Okay. Any comments, questions? Please cast your ballot. Councilmember Reckriegel.
Aye.
That passes unanimously. Madam Clerk, please.
21-196 is a communication from the City Manager and Director of Community Development with a request to concur with a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff to adopt an ordinance amending Appendix A, the Unified Development Code, related to amendments to the permitted use table related to permitted and special uses.
Councilmember Jensen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I kind of have to joke to Director Black, since it's his last day, that I couldn't let you get away without me pulling an item from consent so I could have the opportunity to ask you a question. But I'm just kind of kidding there. I do have a question, and I missed the first reading at the last meeting. The one concern I have, I'm wondering if we don't require car washes to have a special use, how can we ensure that they're complying with all the environmental regulations that are needed because of the chemicals they use and the disposal of those, as well as some of the drainage issues?
Thank you, Councilwoman. So even without the special use, any new development, whether it's a car wash or a shoe store, still has to come through the administrative review process. And so for a car wash, our public works staff would look at items such as drainage, stormwater. For car washes, the Illinois EPA is involved because of the wastewater that is produced. So all of that would happen regardless of whether it's a special use or a permitted use.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that was the case and that the public heard that. So if that is the case, as long as it'll still go through that administrative review process, I will go ahead and move to approve.
Okay. Is there a second? Councilman Kelly? Any other questions? Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Ruckriegel?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
21-217 is a communication from the City Manager and Community Development Director with a request for the following. A, approve a substantial amendment to the 2020-2024 Consolidated Plan for submittal to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and B, adopt an ordinance amending the City of Peoria 2021 revised annual budget relating to the Community Development Block Grant Fund to recognize the receipt of additional grant funds from the Department of Housing and Urban Development to prevent, prepare for, or respond to COVID-19 in the amount of $808,791.
And who pulled that? Okay. Councilmember Jensen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a question. My question about this, Director Black, is, I notice in the council communication that the funds, which are substantial $808,791, will all be used for public facility projects and the administrative costs of the staff to oversee those projects. I guess I'm curious why that was decided, and if you could give some examples of what those public facility projects are, since it's not typically what we use CDBG money for.
I think that's Director Black as well.
Yes.
Thank you, Councilwoman. So just for the dollar-wise to start with, what we are recommending is that there's $688,791 set aside for the public facilities use, and then $120,000 would be set aside for the administrative use associated with that. In terms of public facilities, what the regulation indicates for public facilities is typically it is any type of building that is either government owned or owned by a nonprofit that's open to the general public. It includes improvements to those existing facilities, public improvements that would fall under this also include streets, sidewalks, curbs, gutters, playgrounds, parks. So it's a very, very broad category. What I want to emphasize here is that we are not making any recommendation as to the allocation of these dollars to any specific project. We have a timeliness requirement that HUD has placed on these dollars where we have to provide to them an estimation of what we would use the dollars for. And so because the public facilities category is such a broad category, that was what we thought we would take to the City Council. With that being said, if in the future, if another use comes along that the City Council believes would be a better use that would still be eligible under these very specific CDBG COVID dollars, then this plan could be amended again to shift the dollars to another eligible use. But at this point, we need to sort of put a pin in the map and say this is what we believe these dollars will be used for. If they stay as public facility dollars, then what I would anticipate is either some type of request for proposal or some other outreach to organizations that would typically use these types of dollars to ask them what projects or proposals they may have, and that, of course, would come back to the City Council for approval.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. So it can still be used for nonprofit organizations if the buildings that they use serve the public, or so I'm glad to hear that, and that we can amend it if we need to. Okay.
Correct. And also just to emphasize that because these are specialized CDBG COVID dollars, it's not just that they have to be used for buildings that are owned by a nonprofit, but they have to be used for buildings that are owned by a nonprofit where the use has something to do with COVID.
Okay.
So that's the additional requirement with these dollars.
Okay, and that was my other question. I wanted to know how it was connected to COVID, so you just answered that. Well, thank you, and with that, I move to approve.
Is there a second? Councilman Valpula? Director Black, just another quick question. What's the deadline for using the funds?
Thank you, Mayor. The deadline for the actual use of the funds is not until, I believe, the end of next year. However, we had to hit a deadline next month in what we anticipated the use might be.
Okay, so December 2022.
I believe so, ma'am. I will confirm that and follow up with an email to the council.
Okay, great. Any other questions, comments? Please cast your ballots.
Madam Mayor, if I may,
Thank you.
just for clarification's sake, we need to have two separate motions on this item, one for
Okay.
A and one for B.
Okay, Councilwoman Jensen.
I move to approve item A.
Seconded by Councilmember Valpula. Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Ruckriegel.
Aye.
That motion passes unanimously. Councilmember Jensen,
I move to approve item B.
and seconded by Councilmember Kelly. Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Ruckriegel.
Aye.
That motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk?
21-220 are appointments by Mayor Ali to the Advisory Committee on Police and Community Relations with a request to concur of Alexander Sierra, Catherine Shadle, Lee Lang, and Karen Wilson.
And who pulled that item? Okay. Councilmember Graham?
Thank you. Councilman Allen, Mayor Ali, is there a reason for 3 of these appointments to expire in 22 and 1 in 24?
They are on a staggered schedule. So I believe that's why the one for Scheidel, I think, is 2024. But it's replaced, they're on a staggered schedule, and most of these are replacements. Council Peterson, do you have the specifics?
Sure. Not only is it a staggered schedule, the ordinance actually has that 5 members are appointed for a 1-year term, 5 members are appointed to a 2-year term, and 5 members are appointed to a 3-year term. So we have reappointments filling various vacancies.
Excellent. I move for approval.
Is there a second? Councilmember Allen? Questions? Please cast your ballots. Councilman Rodrigo?
Aye.
That passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
21-222 is an appointment by Mayor Ali to the East Village Growth Cell Committee with a request to concur of Brian Lovingood.
Councilmember Riggenbach?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would ask for a 2-week deferral on this appointment.
Okay. Is there a second? Councilmember Kelly? Any questions, comments? Okay. Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Rodrigo?
Aye.
That passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
21-226 are is an appointment by Mayor Ali to the Peoria Housing Authority with a request to concur of Latasha Perry.
I think this was this Councilman Seer? Okay.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I just had a point of order for the previous motion. Don't we have to say why? Question for Ms. Peterson, why we defer something? I'm just curious. Don't you have to give a reason to defer an item?
I'm sorry, I'm a bit confused by the question for 226.
Mr. Councilman Riggenbach's motion, you just asked for deferment. I just from my own knowledge, don't we have to give a reason why we want to defer something or not?
Give me 1 second, I'll look it up in the council rules. I don't know that one off the top of my head.
Item 21-222. Councilmember Riggenbach?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sometimes I try to be too brief, I guess, so forgive me. But there's the appointments on this commission have certain tranches that they're to fill, and we just want to make sure that Mr. Lovingood, whether or not he fills that tranche that's vacant right now. So nothing nefarious, just brevity. Sorry.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Thank you. So we're on 21-226, and I think this is Councilmember, who pulled that one? Okay. Councilmember Kelly, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think one or the other is wrong. Either what was read as this appointment or my Granicus, okay, because there is another name which I will, yes, I understand. That's on Granicus. Okay. Latasha Perry is on Granicus. There's another name which I won't mention that's on Granicus, and is that name?
Right, correct. So that's why the yellow substitution was there. That name, that person, there was a conflict of interest.
Okay.
So that name was pulled.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're very welcome.
And I will move for approval.
Second? Councilmember Seer? Okay. Any other comments, questions? Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Rodrigo?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
We are at first readings. 21-228 is a communication from the City Manager and Director of Community Development with a request to receive and file a first reading of an ordinance amending Chapter 18 of the Code of the City of Peoria relating to the addition of a licensing requirement for tire businesses.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to have Director Black or Assistant Director Doolin come to the microphone to just kind of talk through the proposed ordinance that we have.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. So, as I think all of you know, we have an issue in Peoria with the dumping of tires. Tires are very difficult to get rid of, and we unfortunately have a lot of people who have taken to leaving discarded tires in alleys and vacant lots and inside vacant buildings. We believe that at least some of these tires can be traced back to tire dealers, tire shops, repair shops, but we have no way to verify that without a licensing requirement and then the ability to audit the trail of the tires, if you will. So this recommendation is to create this license for any person, organization, business that works in the tire business. It would require the business to keep detailed records, which they're supposed to right now under state law, and only use licensed tire disposal companies, which again, they're supposed to under state law. This would allow us to audit them so that we can see that chain of evidence that the tire came in, the individual paid the state-mandated disposal fee for the tire, and then the tire was turned over to a disposal company and then taken to an appropriate landfill that accepts tires. There is we're recommending no actual fee for this license. This would be a zero-charge license because, frankly, we're just more interested in trying to cut down on the number of discarded tires and not use this as an opportunity for revenue. Be happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to compliment Mr. Black and Mr. Doolin on their efforts to amend this code. I did have a few questions about our ability to identify how would this affect existing tire groups. And, I have also heard of, how can I describe them, ma and pa tire shops that may or may not be on the radar for the city. So I was just kind of curious as to know how we could identify those groups, because it's my understanding that some of our illegal tire dumping may be a result of some of those groups and or individuals. So I was just kind of curious as to what measures we have in place. The other question I had was relative to our staffing levels. I know we've had some challenges, and my question is, would our current staffing levels allow for regular monitoring of these tire shops or individuals? And kind of curious as to how often this would occur, because if you drive around on any given week, you're subject to find tires dumped someplace regularly. So my feeling is if we're not staffed to adequately monitor and enforce this on a regular basis, we may not do much justice to solving this problem. And one last observation I had, I was made aware that the city, I think a couple of months ago, caught someone on camera who had gone to a street that, if you didn't know it was there, you wouldn't know the street existed. But this one particular individual was caught dumping twice. The first time he was in a van. The second time he was in a U-Haul truck, unloading lots of stuff. And I know with just a fine of $750, that's not much in the way of substantial penalties, but my question was, at that time, they were looking to pursue criminal charges. What's the likelihood something like that could occur under maybe what's considered just a misdemeanor at this point? And one other question I had while we're talking about possibly amending. At that time, my discussion with Mr. Doolin, we talked about trying to make examples out of individuals who were caught on camera, even if it was just a misdemeanor, to send a message out to would-be tire bandits that we're watching them. And so I would like to see something in the way of possibly community service. Make those individuals responsible for going out and collecting the tires as part of community service. Is that just something we could consider while we're looking at the possibility of amending this? And one last point I wanted to make was I hope as we move forward in trying to deal with this issue that we, while this is good, I think we need to do more than just a Band-Aid approach. We have to go full scale. We have to have signs, we have to have lights in all of our alleys, and we also have to have cameras if we want to, once and for all, after about 10 years, be able to get rid of this problem. Because I would not want to have to come back next year and have this same discussion just because our amendment of the law was just applied and not a full-scale approach to this longstanding problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Jackson. And there's several questions there, and I think we can start with you, Director Black, and then I think we need legal counsel to also weigh in on some of those questions. So, Director?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilwoman. So on the question of being able to make sure that all of the businesses or individuals involved in the tire business are actually registering, that's a heavy lift to start with, which is always the case with a new registration regiment that you've got to capture everyone first. That with the established tire businesses, whether they're large businesses or small businesses, we feel like we feel very confident that we will be able to track them down. In situations where it's someone who is changing tires in their residential garage and they're just doing a few here and there, those are going to be a little bit more difficult. But if we can very quickly get to 80-90% of all tire companies being registered, then it's going to be easier to identify those that are not registered after that point. To your second question on staffing, and I really do appreciate that question, because we always try to keep in mind that just passing a new regulation doesn't actually do anything. That regulatory requirement has to be staffed up in such a way that it can actually be enforced. Otherwise, it's just writing on a piece of paper that will not enforce itself. With this, our approach typically would be to do sort of spot audits of tire companies and individuals involved in that business. So it wouldn't necessarily be that every month, every single tire business in town would be visited by our business license inspector and asked for copies of their paperwork on the disposal of tires. It would be a spot check, and that way everyone knows that they may have a visit, but no one knows if they will have a visit. And typically that works out pretty well to make sure that people stay on their toes. And it also means that after a certain number of months, we're going to be able to cycle through all of the tire businesses in town. And the point that I would make here is that if we can reduce the dumping of tires by doing this, then that relieves pressure on other staffing issues within the city. That's going to relieve pressure on the code enforcement staff because they won't have to be out writing so many work orders, which will reduce the cost that we pay contractors to pick up these tires. So even though it's more of an investment up front, we believe that in the long run it would make a significant difference. And then on the other questions in terms of the prosecution of the tickets that were issued or any community service, I would defer to the Corporation Counsel on that.
Thank you, Ross. There's a couple of aspects of how it would be enforced. First, there would be, as you can see in the ordinance, there's a potential for fine for somebody that isn't appropriately licensed to operate that business. But as to an individual that is sort of caught or cited for illegally dumping tires in a public way or on a private person's property, the city can already ticket them as an ordinance violation. It's actually cited and stated in a declared nuisance. Unfortunately, that only allows us to institute a fine, and it's $100 for the first offense, $200 for the second offense, and then $500 for any third or subsequent offense. As to any criminal charges, we would need to speak to the state's attorney's office about how they may look at suggesting that the police department write those citations and how they would prosecute those, which we're happy to have that conversation with them.
Thank you.
Member Allen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My first question was answered by Director, just seeing how do we go about getting rid of the tires that we collect, and it sounds like we contract out to get rid of those. So appreciate you answering that question. And then my second was just, I just want to give a kudos to my colleague, Councilmember Jackson, your advocacy on this issue. I mean, I remember at our council member orientation, you showed pictures, and I was naive to this issue. I didn't know it was that serious. And so to see us here in a matter of a couple months, I really appreciate your advocacy in your district, but the city of Peoria as well, too. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Mr. Urick?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One other point on the staffing issue that we need to talk about that Director Black didn't discuss is the impact that this is going to have on the finance department. We're adding additional responsibilities for the finance department to take in all of this application information, to take in all the information, to ensure that the forms are filled out properly. With right now no additional staff, it's adding to their workload. So we often talk about the line staff that we have out in the field. We have to remember there's back office staff that have to do all that paperwork when it comes back into City Hall. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jensen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My questions revolve around that same issue that Councilwoman Jackson raised about the administrative costs and that City Manager Urick just mentioned. I'm concerned that if we don't, and I understand we're not charging a fee, but I'm wondering if maybe if we do come back, we should charge a fee that would then cover the additional administrative costs to make sure we have enough staff to really put some teeth in this and to enforce it. I know we don't have to be prepared to do that tonight. If you could come back potentially with some thoughts on that and a report. I'm not advocating, I don't want to advocate more fees, but if we're just going to put this on the books and not really be able to enforce it like Councilwoman Jackson said, then it's not, we might need to do more. This has been an ongoing issue for the 8 years I've been on the council, and it's really hurting neighborhoods on the south side and even in the 2nd district and the 3rd district. So I see you shaking your head, so you think that you would come back with some kind of report to us?
Since this is a first reading, we could certainly come back and ensure that we at least examine it, look at what that potential workload would be on both the finance team and on community development, and we can report back. As we start to get into prosecution, you'll have additional impacts on legal as well. So there's more downstream after we create sometimes these ordinances that we have to think about as well. But we can certainly look at that and provide some analysis and bring that back in 2 weeks.
Okay, and additionally, I don't know if this might be worth spending some of the recovery funds on. It does, I think, fit under the blight category. So, I mean, I know that could be a possibility. As a follow-up to maybe in the report back, or I'd like to know how many potential businesses this is, if there's an estimate out there. I know it wouldn't cover all the mom and pop stores, but so we know what kind of numbers, how many businesses like this there are out there, so what it would really entail administratively.
We can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Riggenbach.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And that last question from Councilwoman Jensen was really where I was going to start, is there an estimate for how many businesses that we would be looking at on this? And Director Black, I don't know if you have that off the top of your head, or if that was something that was looked at when this was drafted, or if you want to just bring that in 2 weeks, that's fine also. But I think that's an important part of this, because having the staff not just in the code enforcement end of it, but the administrative end is very important. And I would say I want to be cautious in committing recovery funds that are a one-time funding source to something that's going to be an ongoing expense. So clearly this is a problem that needs some attention. And I really appreciate this coming forward, Councilwoman Jackson. Thank you. And if we could just get a little more clarity on the number of businesses and what kind of increase that the Finance Department would anticipate on that, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, I'd like to second the comments of Councilmember Allen and Riggenbach praising Councilwoman Jackson on her advocacy for this. And I, like Councilman Allen, was not really aware of this problem or the extent of this problem. I'd also like to move to receive and file.
Is there a second? Okay, Councilmember Sear. And Councilmember Sear, you had a question or comment also.
No, I've turned my light off. All my questions were asked. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Okay, you're welcome. Any other comments? Okay. It's been moved and seconded to receive and file. Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Ruckriegel.
Aye.
Passed unanimously. Madam Clerk.
21-229 is a communication from the City Manager and Corporation Council with a request to receive and file a first reading of an ordinance amending Chapter 27, Taxation, Article 12, Motor Fuel Tax of the Code of the City of Peoria pertaining to penalties for violation of said ordinance.
Council Peterson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At the last council meeting, we presented some options that would include additional regulations for gasoline stations, whether they are standalone or hold liquor or tobacco licenses. The draft of the ordinance you have in front of you makes the violation of any other ordinance or state or federal law grounds for the license to be suspended or revoked, or grounds for a financial penalty.
Councilmember Jensen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got a question about Section B.
Speak up just a little.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I have a question about paragraph B in the proposed ordinance, the draft ordinance. It talks about how repeated offenses in excess of 3 may be punishable as a misdemeanor by incarceration. I guess I'm just checking, we don't have, as a city, the legal authority to do that, do we? Or would
No,
it
we
be
do
through-
not, and that is an excellent catch that we need to clean up out of the code. That's not new language, that's old language that we obviously carried over when we were doing the drafting. So the revised draft that comes back to you will strike that section out.
Okay, and then you might also want to look at Section C. Since we now have a woman mayor, can we change the hims and the he's to she or he/she?
We've actually considered that, and I will say at the beginning of the code, there is a section about references to he, him, she, her should be gender neutral and not to be taken, and to be taken only in that context, that they should be gender neutral.
Okay, I just know, I think in the beginning part, though, we use she, so you might, maybe I'm just being nitpicky, but that's the lawyer in me, so you might want to
I'll be happy to
look
check
at that. Thank you.
Motion,
Oh, I move to receive and file.
Councilmember Velpula. Any other comments? Councilman Graham?
So, in effect, Council Peterson, what we will be doing here, if this ultimately passes, this is the first reading, is reminding the proprietors of businesses so designated that they have responsibilities, and that if they don't meet those responsibilities, they can lose their license to sell some of these products.
That is an excellent summary, Counselor.
Gosh. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Ruckrigo?
Aye.
That motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
We are at regular business. 21-230 is a communication from the City Manager and Director of Economic Development with a request to receive and file a presentation from the Greater Peoria Economic Development Corporation.
I see a familiar face in the chambers. Welcome, Mr. Setti.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. First time I've had a chance to publicly say Madam Mayor, so congratulations. And it is great to be back. I think I spoke to you all, but the last time was virtually, so glad to be back in the chambers. And happy to talk to you today about a specific item, which is our Regional Economic Development Plan, a comprehensive economic development strategy. So what I always start with in any time I make a presentation is just to briefly talk about what the Greater Peoria Economic Development Council is. And I always start with the mission, as the head of any good nonprofit organization hopefully would do, is talk about the mission of the organization. And that we, and to me, the most important part is the part of our mission that is in orange, is kind of separated by the commas, that in collaboration with our local partners and communities, we look to drive the economic success of the region through talent and business attraction and development. But the partnership part is really the important part, because we can't do this alone, and we do collectively as an organization, and that is not just the 7 members of my staff, but as a region, we do collectively what's hard to do individually. And so some of the services we provided are listed on there, but the one I'm going to talk about tonight is economic planning and research, because a lot of times we talk about business attraction or startup work, but really one of our core missions is to manage the region's comprehensive economic development strategy. This is a document that is produced every 5 years or so, and it's part of the U.S. Economic Development Administration. And years ago, the U.S. EDA came together to talk about the essence of regional economic development, is that we act as regions, that we aren't just the city of Peoria or even just Peoria County, but that regional economies or that any economy is truly regional in nature, and that we need to work together to have a plan for how we're going to move the region together. This SEDS, we chose to call it the Big Table SEDS, because it was really based on a lot of the work that was done at the very first Big Table event, which was in October of 2019, and then followed up in the intervening time with some individual Big Table events that we had in our rural communities, and then a series of online dialogues last October around specific issues of innovation and startup, workforce development, quality of place and quality of life, and then diversity and inclusion. We took all of that. Over 1,800 people participated in one form or another over the course of 2 years in the Big Table events. We took all of that input. We had a group of stakeholders. Our committee has about 25 members in it, including Deborah Rattler from the city of Peoria. To combine this into a strategy for the region, to work on. And it's difficult in what I hope will just be a 10-minute presentation to condense, 52 pages of a document that took a year to put together and had all of that different stakeholder input into just a few moments of explaining it to you. And I really would encourage you to take a look, and I have a link to our SEDS if you haven't seen it already. But it's an important document, and one thing I want to say, it is not the work plan of the Greater Peoria Economic Development Council. The SEDS strategy is the work plan for the region. We have lots of partners that are part of this work. You are partners in part of this work. There are things that are strategies in the SEDS that are very much the responsibility of my organization, but there are things that we don't do anything about, like tourism, like housing, like public health. But that's why we have the partnerships we have. But the real goal of the SEDS is economic resilience. And if we heard this word over and over again in this last couple of years with COVID, about resiliency, the ability to bounce back. And for us, we are lucky in this region that we are relatively disaster-proof, right? We don't tend to have hurricanes or earthquakes or forest fires. And so a lot of economic resiliency planning is really about how do you bounce back from natural disasters. And then sometimes man-made disasters, right? Or economic shocks like the closure of a military base or the downsizing of a large business. But really, resiliency takes lots of different forms. And the real goals behind this SEDS is really about building economic resiliency through diversity, so industry diversification. We, as a community, have been sometimes overly reliant in our younger years on one major employer, right? And we have seen, as important as Caterpillar still is to our region and will continue to be so, it does not have the employment base here that it used to in this percentage, right? Now we are very much both manufacturing and healthcare, and that's great, and we need to continue that diversification. And so a lot of these goals is really talking about economic diversification. So there's 4 goals, and I'm just going to go through them briefly and then open up for any questions. So the first goal is really the business goal, right? How do we develop the business community in our region? And there's 4 main strategies. One around innovation. How are we supporting our entrepreneurs, whether they're interested in opening a corner restaurant or they're interested in the next big thing, right? Like a natural fiber welding or bump boxes. One is being able to attract investment from outside the region here, so our traditional business attraction activities. One is to grow our existing businesses, and as important as business attraction activities are, 80 to 90% of the jobs are going to come from the businesses that you already have in your community. So how are we supporting those businesses? And then the 4th goal is really how are we developing our real estate and our infrastructure to take advantage of those opportunities when they come? So our road system, our rail system, what sorts of sites and buildings do we have available on the markets when those attraction opportunities come calling? Kind of on the right side, just a couple of examples of what's already happening here, right? So Distillery Labs, as all of you, and I've got a chance to meet with many of you individually on behalf of Distillery Labs to talk about how that will be supporting entrepreneurship. Peoria Biomade, actually an endeavor that was started by former Mayor Artis along with Jake Beecraft, and has been kind of taken on by our organization to see if we can market Peoria as an area for biomedical manufacturing. And then the Manufacturing Network, which is an organization that or a program that we run that supports our local small and medium-sized manufacturing to help them diversify their own business lines, so that if they're typically Caterpillar suppliers, how can we help them market themselves to be suppliers for others? Number 2 is workforce. And I will say they're 1, 2, 3, and 4, not in order of importance. Because in fact, and sometimes I feel that workforce may be the most important of because it makes the other things happen. Nobody wants to come to your community if you don't have employees to take those jobs. Our existing companies can't grow if they can't get employees to do the work. So workforce is preeminent. So it's maybe first among equals when we talk about strategies. And so here when we're talking about it, we're talking about our emerging workforces. How are we preparing our youth for the careers of tomorrow? How are we helping people that have barriers to employment overcome those barriers, whether they're transportation, whether they're social skills issues, whether they're childcare issues? How are we preparing them for the jobs that are available? And then how are we upskilling? How are we making sure that our citizens have the right training for the jobs that are available, so that we can have family-sustaining jobs in our community that people could take advantage of? And then finally, how are we attracting talent to our region? How are we getting people to recognize how great Peoria is? There's just an article in the Journal Star today. JJ, I don't know if you wrote. Oh, it was an editorial by a woman who moved here from Chicago because her husband or her partner at least is at UECOM at the College of Medicine, and she wrote kind of a love letter to Peoria. How do we have that happen more often? So on the right side, GPEAK is a ICC started this together. It's a kind of a social skills curriculum and certification program. Career Spark is an annual event that my organization, along with Junior Achievement, does to expose 8th graders to all of the careers in our region. And then Greater Peoria 2030 is a talent attraction campaign. The Convention and Visitors Bureau, the CEO Council of my organization, along with the East Peoria, Pekin, and Morton Chambers of Commerce, and the Downtown Development Corporation are all working together on a formal talent attraction campaign, a marketing campaign to the Chicago area. The third area is quality of place. These are all of the things that make life worth living, right? So how are we having a healthy lifestyle, in our community and supporting healthy lifestyles and healthy choices? How are we investing in our town centers? I think the item right after me is about an improvement to downtown in coordination with OSF. Investing in our town centers, whether that's downtown Peoria or downtown Havana, Illinois, is very important. How are we actively promoting our assets to our own people, right? Sometimes we are our own worst enemy. We see this all the time when there's an article that's written about something positive. The first comment is about something negative. And so how are we marketing what we have here to the people that live here? That's really what the Big Table event has really been all about. High-speed internet. There's really two issues with high-speed internet. One is availability, and then the other is accessibility. So in the city of Peoria, the issue isn't so much availability. Most of the city is wired up in one way or the other to get high-speed internet, but can you access it? Do you have the money to be able to access it? But in our rural communities, I will tell you that broadband is a very, very real issue that we need to work on. And then finally, making sure that that we have affordable and appropriate housing, no matter what your income level is. The last area is around natural resources, kind of the wordiest area. My staffer, who was responsible for writing this, really went to town on this. I'm not going to read those, and I have a hard time reading it from here anyways. But it's really about developing more businesses around our natural assets. It's really one of the things that we have in our region that makes us unique. We have this amazing river that runs through it. We have some really natural beauty. And so it really is an opportunity to capitalize on these things, whether it's commercializing our natural resources. There, in the middle there is Source Freshwater Company, which is a company in East Peoria that is commercializing Asian carp. That's a natural resource that we're taking advantage of and commercializing. Or it's making sure that we have businesses along our rivers and places like Wildlife Prairie Park, that are taking advantage of the beauty of this region. And how do we draw tourism here? And that's the great work that our friends at Discover Peoria, the Convention and Visitors Bureau, are doing, is shining a light on the great opportunities that are here, which was especially important during COVID when outdoor activities were really important. The Riverfront Market is another example of how are we, obviously we grow a lot of corn and we grow a lot of soybeans with a smattering of pumpkins, and a little further south you get some green beans and some other things. But how do we grow more things that we can consume here in our own region? And things like the Peoria Farmers Market is a great example of living that particular strategy out. I want to finish with the idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Because that was very important. And as we were writing the SEDS, we were recognizing that the city and the county were jointly having this commission. I'm on one of the subcommittees on economic development, and we didn't want to write goals and then have somebody else write a set of goals. And the great thing about a SEDS is it should be a living document. But really, what we tried to find in all of our goals and strategies is how can we use a diversity lens to see them, so that when we're talking about startup businesses, we're really also talking about how do we make sure that everybody has an opportunity to start a business if they want to. When we're talking about workforce, we're making sure that the poorest parts of our community, the ones that struggle the most, are paid attention to. And so we will continue to work alongside the City-County Joint Commission on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion to make sure that the goals that are there are reflected within the SEDS itself, because it's very important. I had lunch with Mayor Ali, and to me, the issue of diversity and having a fair economy is just as important in Peoria as it should be in Morton or Washington. Those parts of our community can't be successful if 61605 is unsuccessful. And so we really believe it needs to be a regional conversation. I applaud the Peoria County and the city for taking the leadership, but it really does need to be regional. Finally, I'm here obviously for questions if you have them. If you go to our website, there's lots more. It's a 52-page document, but it's the easiest 52 pages I hope you will ever read. We purposely made it. I've seen SEDS before. They're like 80 pages of Times New Roman, 12-point font, single-spaced, and they have a lot of information, which is great. We wanted to make it visually appealing, very accessible to the reader. There's a couple of different parts of it. You can learn a lot about the community, about the region itself, some things as a denizen of the city of Peoria myself that you don't even realize might be here. So I would encourage you, if you go to we manage this thing, it's called the Data Hub. It's data.greaterpeoria.us, and then if you go /SEDS, you would find the strategy itself. But there's measurements. We'll be trying to keep track of our strategies and how they're working, and you can find all kinds of information at the Data Hub. So with that, I am going to turn it back over to Madam Mayor, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Chris. It is clear that a lot of thought and effort has went into this process, and the document itself is a pretty thick document. I have a hard copy of it that I've went through. It's driven. I think the vision and the goals, objectives are very clear and comprehensive for our region. It's just an excellent document, and I encourage all of us to be familiar with it. It's the foundation for how I think that we can continue to develop and grow our region. So thank you, and I'm going to move to questions from the council. Councilman Greb.
Mr. Setti, now that you're no longer working under the yoke of City Manager Urick, I hope you're getting...
I'm not alone, evidently, if everybody's leaving tonight, so...
Hope you're getting to bed at a more decent hour. Manager Urick, he was up at 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, routinely when he was employed by the city of Peoria, and I detect, Mayor Lee, that he still has the same amount of enthusiasm now that he had then. Thank you for the excellent presentation. And I suspect that Karen Velpula is going to want to talk a little bit about the medical aspect. I still would like us to, even though it might be possibly not yield any fruit, I would like us to check with Rivian to see if there's any way we can accommodate them. I know we had a little bit of email this morning about Rivian and perhaps needing more land. And I understand they're looking at further development on some acreage in Normal, but I think we have something to offer here as well, even though the council would have to take some steps to make that possible. But do you see anything on the horizon that currently is not in the news that may end up being a big boon for Central Illinois and for certainly Peoria?
Well, just real quick on Rivian, we'd be happy, and we have had conversations with some of the site selectors around them. They do own 380 acres right across the street from their current plant. But I think Rivian, just as by way of example, is the perfect example of regional economic development. That Rivian is in our community. It might not be in the city of Peoria, it might not even be in Peoria County, but when Mitsubishi closed in whenever that was, 2012 or 2015, my predecessor had asked them for the list of zip codes of all of their employees, and half of their employee base lived in the Peoria area. Now that may have been Woodford and Tazewell County as well, but they were associated basically with the Tri-County area. We know that our labor shed extends to McLean County, as it does to Knox County and other places. So it's important to support Rivian in lots of ways, but that is certainly something that we can look at. As far as I'm not going to break any news in council here, but I do think that there's great things that are happening, in our region. Very much, we saw it right here in the city of Peoria with a company like Natural Fiber Welding. And if any of you were watching the opening ceremonies of the Olympics, Ralph Lauren did all of the uniforms for the American delegation, and all of them were wearing blue jeans. And on the back of every blue jean of every American athlete was a patch that used to be made of leather that is now made of mirum. So a little bit of Peoria, made right here in Peoria on Galena Road, and a little patch, a little piece of Peoria was in Tokyo. And that is the type of company that we should all be very proud of, is here and grew up here in Peoria over the last 5 years, from the 2 employees when I first met them to over 200 employees here pretty soon, and outgrown their space. So I think those are the types of things that the city should applaud and continue the great work that Kevin Evans and Caesar and Deborah worked with us on their expansion plans, to the warehouse district, or right there in Southtown warehouse district, whatever you want to call that particular parcel. So I think it's those kinds of businesses. Virtue Sense is another company that just outgrew its space in Peoria Next. They moved to an office building that's kind of right behind Portillo's. They might outgrow that space. They've doubled in the size, and they've gone from like 40 employees to 80 employees just in the last year. And those are the, home runs are great, but, you can get a long way in baseball by hitting singles consistently, too.
Mr. City, some things, though, are hiding in plain sight. For example, mass production of penicillin done on North University Street. Jacob B. Kraft, many of our medical professionals, their vision for Peoria becoming a biomanufacturing hub, our $250 million cancer center coming online. Surely there are ways we can bring these strands together, and I believe that Northern Regional Research Lab is absolutely critical for our future. And I think sometimes it's overlooked, and gosh knows we had at least a couple of attempts to defund it, which happily were beaten back on a bipartisan basis. But I see that as being a huge part of our future. yes, I like the idea of everything you're mentioning, but I think there's some big picture things that we haven't cultivated yet, completely, especially in the medical arena.
And I would the Peoria Biomade effort that Jake Beecraft has launched and has been working with our office, with Lenora Fisher, our director of business attraction. How do we tell the world that Peoria is the place that this can be done? And so we've been laying that groundwork. To make sure that happens. We've worked with Bradley on how can they develop a curriculum around biomanufacturing and some of those things. We work with ICC in kind of in the same way, because we need to lay that groundwork. We need to find the right type of building that biomedical manufacturing just can't go anywhere, right? It has to go in a particular type of building that has to be built or renovated. So those are the things that we've been working. My director of business attraction was just down in St. Louis, talking to people in this particular area, because St. Louis is a big life sciences area. And so I would agree. And I think medical is very much one of the futures of our community. The cancer center that OSF is putting on, I think, will be transformative, not only from a therapy standpoint, but from the research standpoint as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilmember Velpula.
It's a nice presentation.
Thank you.
And you touched on two important things that I really are very close to my heart. First thing is the healthcare and workforce development, right? So what we have are, I envision them as long-term goals, right? So how are we prepared? Let's say now the cancer center comes to become a reality very soon, and I met somebody yesterday, and she was telling that the job market would be like 1:2:9. So for one doctor, we'll have 2 support staff followed by 9. So I'm not worried about the one, because that is the talent that we want to bring in. And we'll have the 2 that comes from the local areas. But the majority of the work is done by those 9. So I would really like to know how prepared are we? Because in your presentation, I like all of it, but one thing that struck with me was your statement that we don't have fires, we don't have hurricanes, but we still lose people. The reason why we lose people is we don't find jobs. And now we find opportunity here in the form of a cancer center. And how are we prepared for that? And cancer center not only brings doctors, physicians, but it brings a lot of businesses towards it. It brings a lot of traction, a lot of support staff, IT. So where is the talent now? Where are we? How are we going to fill that gap? And are we? I heard that we are going to change the curriculum. We're going to go talk to the ICC to see things happen, which is perfect, because we need to have the talent retained in Peoria. That's one other aspect of my thought process as well. But what kind of infrastructure is needed? Let's say in the Biomade, Beecraft comes down. What kind of staff? What kind of talent? So what kind of skill sets are needed, and how do we import that? How do we make that happen? So that I always believe that it's very hard to bring people, large number of people down to Peoria. But since we see the opportunity, we see the magnitude. I know the magnitude of cancer center. And I believe that all the healthcare will step up their game in Peoria. So in that way, we'll have a competitive hiring. So are we ready for that? And I would really wanted to, gather your brain on that.
Well, that's probably a longer conversation than I would have tonight. But workforce is incredibly important, and the statistics show that a highly functioning economy 60% of the people in that economy, of the working age population, would have some sort of post-secondary certification. That could be a credential, it could be an associate's degree, it could be a PhD, it could be an MD. Right now, our region, we're at about somewhere in the low 40s. We have work to do. It's the most important thing that we could be doing. It is not everybody has to go to college. We've heard that loud and clear. Not everybody needs to have a bachelor's degree, but everybody needs something more than a high school diploma in order to have that family-sustaining wage. We are blessed by having some really tremendous educational institutions. And Illinois Central College, one of the most aggressive and entrepreneurial of those, has been really a key to that, being able to develop programs quickly to get people, through trainings quickly. Bradley University, Methodist College, Eureka College, these are all really great parts of this system. And we have to be able to identify what those skills are. But more importantly, we have to get people prepared to take the training. A lot of problems, when we talk about these multiple barriers, people want to be trained, but sometimes they can't leave their current job to go to training when they're not getting paid, right? You don't get paid to go to school, you actually pay to go to school. And even if you make school free, like a community college free, that doesn't mean that they can leave their current job, in order to take those classes. So we need to be continually thinking about all the different barriers that people have towards taking those. So the medical field, my wife works for Methodist College. Bradley and ICC are training nurses and other medical professionals. That's all very, very important because we don't produce enough nurses in the region to satisfy the number of nurses that we need. And that's just one, welders and nurses. We could use 100 of each right now. And so at the moment we're in a workforce crisis that we have more jobs than we have people able to take them. CDL, over-the-road truck drivers, are another big area where we're just really struggling. So it takes a systematic approach and it takes a layered approach. We need to be talking to our high school students about what careers are there and what can they be doing even in high school. My daughter is 17 years old. She's already got her CNA license. She doesn't want to be a CNA, but she thought she'd get it because that would give her the experience because she wants to be a doctor. District 150, Peoria Public Schools has some really great, their D2 program where you can graduate from high school and have that credential already in hand. So we need to be able to support more of those. I'd be happy to talk
High school
more
and
about
college at the same time.
Right, high school and college at the same time.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
I think these things will happen. The timeline, I know it's not nothing. It's not. It's very hard to say, but
Sure.
we should have a timeline. So, what is the timeline?
Yeah, well, this plan is a 5-year plan, but it will, we won't get from for the example, if you need to get to 60%, that's not likely to happen in 5 years. But can we get to 50% in 5 years? We've started to measure it. So what doesn't get measured doesn't get improved. And so that's where we've started, right, is the measurement. It will take time. These are things that are complicated, and there are multiple layers, to them. But I do think that it's something that's obviously worth, putting our investment into.
And there's a framework in place through the Regional Workforce Alliance, and Mr. Setti is a part of that. And I think Councilman Velpula is going to look into perhaps being involved in that initiative. But it's a project that came out of the CEO Council. However, it engages many of the educational and training institutions, from the trades to the universities to the college systems to the K through 12 systems, not just Peoria Public Schools, but Dunlap and the regional superintendents, and just a lot of people involved in this regional planning initiative. So, Councilmember Sear.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Setti, thank you very much for your presentation. I know you've been around a long time, and I'm sure you will understand my question. We have some new members around the council, and they're going to go through their first exercise of trying to accomplish a balanced budget. Tell me a little bit, or tell us a little bit, how is your organization funded? So all of us know exactly in a couple months from now when we start talking about our budget. Thank you very much, sir.
Sure. So we are a partnership organization. We're organized as a 501c6 organization, not unlike a chamber of commerce. And we have investors, which the city of Peoria is one of them. We raise funds every year from both the public and the private, about 50-50. If you take out the federal grants that we get and some of our business income, we raise about $700,000 every year in what I call voluntary contributions, right? There's nothing that says you have to invest in us. About 50% of that comes from our private sector, banks, construction companies, our two big hospitals. Caterpillar is a big supporter. But then also our public entities. So the city of Peoria, Peoria County, all of the counties, a lot of the cities are all contributing, what they feel is a meaningful amount to do this work. We think that we take the burden off of some of your staff that you would have to hire ordinarily. So in business attraction, for example, we can have one person, Lenora Fisher, who can go to trade shows and represent the entire region versus everybody paying for that travel to happen, right? So again, what we do collectively what's difficult to do individually. So that's, then we do get some support from the federal government to write the SEDS, and then some other we run a foreign trade zone, and we have some other program income.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Well, Greater Peoria EDC is an extension of Peoria's economic development activities, and we couldn't do it alone, and it's not good to do it alone. It's best to do it in collaboration. So Chris, I know, has also been helpful in bringing outside funding to both the city as well as Illinois Central College and other entities. So we appreciate the collaboration. And
the USEDA just announced how they're going to spend the $3 billion that they got from the American Rescue Plan, and $3 billion doesn't sound like a lot of money in a $1.9 trillion plan, but $3 billion is a lot of money for the EDA. And I've already worked with Manager Urich and a few others to how can we tap into that. They've just released the details of that. And so we've looked at a couple of projects here in Peoria. We're in the midst of hopefully getting a $2 million grant for Distillery Labs from EDA. So that's one of our jobs, is to be your conduit to the U.S. Economic Development Administration.
Yes. Great. Other questions? Thank you, Mr. Setti.
Thank you.
Mr. Urich, did you want to comment, Mr. Manager, on anything?
Well, I think just to follow up with what Mr. Setti just said, I think that the relationship that we have with GPEDC is vital. Having that regional approach to look at this region and the issues that we have with economic development, while we focus on the city, is really something that is intertwined throughout this region. And employment comes from all over the region. Even our employees that we have that work for the city of Peoria come from all over this region. So it's important that we're setting that stage to try and grow business locally, grow what we have, attract new business where we can, and to grow that talent here at home. And so they're really doing a very important job for us. And I want to thank Mr. Setti for his leadership in that role. So,
thank you. Councilman Kelly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The item is to receive and file a presentation. Where could you reiterate, or ask Mr. Setti to reiterate, where we can get this presentation? I don't know that we have it.
If you're referring to the presentation I made tonight, or do you mean the document itself?
I'm referring to whatever it is that's on the agenda. I suppose it's your presentation tonight, but I don't know.
I think you also want the copy of the SIDS, the planning
Happy
doc.
to get that to you. But yeah, the slideshow I provided to the city last week. If that's what you're looking for, just the slides, we can certainly get you that, and also a copy of the SEDS itself.
Okay. And to get the sets, we just go to your site, I suppose.
Yeah, you go. I mean, I'd be happy to email it to you, Councilman. But it's data.greaterpeoria.us/SEDS is where you can find it.
All right, thank you. So is there any action that we need to take to receive and file?
Just to move to receive and file the presentation.
Okay, I will so move.
Okay. Second, Councilman Graham. There was, okay. All right, any other questions, comments? Please cast your ballots. Councilman Ruckriegel?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Mr. Setti, appreciate it. Madam Clerk?
21-231 is a communication from the city manager with a request for the following. A, to adopt an ordinance amending the City of Peoria 2021 revised annual budget relating to the use of the Central Business District TIF fund balance to reimburse OSF Healthcare System and 124 Adams Property Holdings, LLC, up to $1.25 million for public improvements to the corners of Fulton Street and Adams Street and Washington Street. And B is to approve the First Amendment to the revised redevelopment agreement and parking deck lease with OSF Healthcare System and 124th Southwest Adams Property Holding, LLC, and we'll need two separate motions on these.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As we talk about economic development, we talk about the investment that's being made by our largest employer, OSF Healthcare. One of the items that we had in the development of the OSF mission headquarters was $1 million they would be spending on the public improvements on the block itself. And that block that we're talking about is where the Block and Pool building is. It's bordered by Fulton Street, Adams Street, Main Street, and Washington Street. Within that, we, after they had developed their plans, started to do the work on the conversion of the one-way to two-way streets in Adams and Jefferson and downtown. That necessitated a change in some of the design work at the corner of Adams Street and Fulton that was not contemplated by the work that OSF was planning on doing. Second, OSF talked to us about when were we planning on improving the second half of Washington Street in front of their block from Main Street to Fulton Street. It's in our capital budget for 2024. And in the discussions that we had with OSF, they said, well, look, we've got the street torn up right now. We can work with our contractors to get that street built to your specifications, so that one city block portion, and it's really only kind of the southwest portions of the block, because the northeast section that when you're traveling towards I-74 has already been completed. We improved that when we did the museum block. So that would complete half of what we had envisioned being done in 2024. And what we would do is just simply reimburse OSF for their expenses at improving the street for us out of the downtown Central Business District TIF, and that's what's in front of you this evening. And I believe that Representative Ryan Spain, representing OSF, is here with us this evening, so it's an extension of Old Home Week with the people that are coming back.
Thank you for being here, Representative Spain. Good to see you. Councilmember Graham?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, your light was on. That's all right. Councilmember Sear?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A few questions for Mr. Urick. How much money do we have in the TIF program?
Well, this TIF, this downtown Central Business District TIF, is nearing the completion of its 35-year run, and so we have what amounts to 2 years left in this TIF. It's roughly generating about $1 million a year right now with some redevelopment agreements that will be falling off. So we really just have what will amount to be about $2 million over what's the remaining life in this TIF. And outside of redevelopment agreements, what we've predominantly used the TIF increment for is to do public improvements just like this, which would be fixing the street and reimbursing some of the design costs to OSF for the change in the sidewalk work around the block. So this is consistent and eligible expenses under the TIF. And as I said, in 2 years this TIF expires, and so at that point in time, then all the other taxing bodies would see that they'll get the increased value that's coming off of this TIF.
Second question, I couldn't find my note. Tell me about the parking structure. I know a couple years ago, we also had negotiation to fix parking and things like that. Where are we at with our investment on that?
That's correct. OSF will be leasing the One Technology Plaza deck from us. It will be a triple net lease. That's still part of the agreement. That's all included in the redevelopment agreement. That's still the plan going forward. During this period of time, while they're constructing the headquarters, they're paying us when they're parking in the deck for their workers that are parking in the deck. Since they opened up the OSF on-call facility down the street on Adams Street, there's additional parkers that are now parking in our parking deck from their facility there as well. So that was all envisioned in the original redevelopment agreement and is planned to move forward.
I should have called you today, but can you recall what was the triple net revenue?
Oh, I think I don't have that number off the top of my head, but it's going to be substantial for the city, and it's a good development for OSF as well.
Now, can you recall if it's going to be enough to pay for this investment, or we need to tap in the TIF program?
Well, this was never the investment of the $1.25 million that we're talking about here. We had originally talked about using motor fuel tax funds for. So this frees that up because we're able to use the downtown TIF funds on this kind of public infrastructure. That frees up motor fuel tax dollars in 2024 that would have been going towards this project for other projects that can be used by the city.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Councilman Riggenbach?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If you haven't driven downtown lately and seen the windows starting to go into that building, it's really coming to life. And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't just thank OSF for that $127 million investment in our downtown and the 700 people that are going to be bringing that downtown back to life here as we emerge from this long quarantine. One question, though, if I may, Mr. Manager. When you talk about the $1.25 million to be reimbursed from the TIF for these improvements, it also states that there was $1 million that was anticipated. So is this going to be a total of $2.25 million, or?
No. What we had originally, when we originally developed the redevelopment agreement, the redevelopment agreement called for a $127 million investment by OSF that would be eligible for TIF reimbursement. During the first 7 years that they hold, they have a holding company that will be holding the property so that they could avail themselves of the historic preservation tax credits. During that period of time, they'll be paying property taxes on the building, and they'll get the reimbursement back from the property tax increment outside of the base. They'll get that reimbursement back during that 7-year period of time. Once that concludes, it's likely that the building will be moved to being tax exempt, so there will be no additional reimbursement. This is just the additional $1.25 million that was not envisioned to be part of the reimbursement of their property taxes that they generate, but instead allows us to kind of fast track at least one city block of this using the available TIF dollars that we have, allowing them to manage the construction project since they've already got the street torn up. And then we move this project forward, so at least that one city block is complete 4 years ahead of time.
I understand that, and I think that's a great use of and a creative way to get the project done. But my question is the work that's being done $1.25 million or $2.25 million?
The work that we're talking about is $1.25 million. The work on the block, the envisioned public infrastructure improvements, OSF was planning on doing basically from the curb line in. That was their responsibility. That's what we negotiated in the redevelopment agreement with them.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Allen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As we look to provide this reimbursement potentially, were these funds earmarked for another project, or they were just always just in the TIF program, just waiting for the next bid?
They were these are unobligated dollars that we currently have in the downtown TIF. The Central Business District TIF was amended when we were originally working with Caterpillar on their headquarters project, where we took a lot of property out and created the downtown conservation TIF. So it's now a much smaller TIF district. It's really only about 4 city blocks is what's left in that downtown Central Business District TIF. And again, that expires in 2 years, and then that TIF will conclude, and so it'll just be the tax dollars, any of the incremental tax dollars that are currently being generated will go to all the taxing bodies.
Thank you. Sounds like a great use of funds. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Manager.
Okay. Can I get a motion on item A? Councilman Riggenbach, seconded by Councilmember Jackson. Any other questions, comments? Okay, you're casting your ballots. Uh-oh. We'll go close. Okay. Please cast your ballots. Thank you, Paul. Councilman Riggenbach? Oh, excuse me, Councilman Ruckriegel?
Aye.
Thank you. Item A passes unanimously. Can I get a motion on item B? Councilmember Kelly, seconded by Councilmember Graham. Any comments, questions? Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Ruckriegel?
Aye.
That passes unanimously. Thank you. Madam Clerk?
21-232 is a communication from the City Manager and Corporation Council with a request to adopt an ordinance amending Chapter 3 of the Code of the City of Peoria regarding catering organizations.
Okay. Council Peterson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple of months ago, the city was approached by a mobile bar owner and wanted to explore some changes to our liquor code that would allow them to operate within the city. We looked at our existing catering licenses, and both of them, we have a K and a K1, both are catering licenses, require alcohol to be sold only incidental to meal service, and neither one of those licenses allows the sale of alcohol to individuals on a per drink basis. There is one slight exception, and that's for the Contemporary Arts Center that was sort of carved out separately. So we looked at ordinances that were recently passed in Peoria Heights, East Peoria, and Morton, and the owner of one of the mobile bars recently came to the Liquor Commission hearing to discuss this and to have the Liquor Commission provide some input. Ultimately, the Liquor Commission could support this ordinance as long as the mobile bar had a state license, there were time limitations set for both indoor and outdoor events, and the mobile bar had to agree to control the area, although they were allowed some discretion in how they would do that, whether it be perhaps by caution tape or planters, or if it's an indoor event, obviously it would be inside the facility. They would not have to sell food in conjunction with this, but they would have to have a one license per year from the city. That's not one license per event, that's an annual license, but then for each event where they would be operating or catering, they would have to notify the city clerk's office at least 10 days ahead of time. So what you have is a draft ordinance that we're asking to be passed, and with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that I can.
Councilmember Allen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When you say mobile bar, I think about the pedal bus thing in the Heights that I see. Is that an example of that?
The example that we've sort of asked people to think about is an old Gulfstream trailer that's perhaps been retrofitted to look like a bar, and maybe it's something like a wedding reception, or maybe at a more public event if a business is hosting maybe an open house in their parking lot.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Riggenbach?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilor Peterson, would this be limited to mobile bars, or would it be open for other catering uses?
It would be available to other catering uses if they could meet the requirements with the temporary state licenses.
Okay. And is the $800 fee comparable to what other East Peoria, Pure Heights?
It's similar to other catering licenses, yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Jensen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to thank you, Corporation Council. This is a great idea and shows initiative on your part on being really responsive to, our business community. One question I have, will they be able to go anywhere in the city, I assume, and set up, or how will that work?
They would be able to go anywhere in the city, although they would fall under some of the same restrictions that a food truck would, so that they could not locate just randomly in a residential area on a Friday evening, for example. These are closed, catered, or not necessarily closed, but these are to be catered events.
Okay, so you couldn't get a mobile bar to come to your house if you're having a party? Or
if you were having a birthday party, you could have it at your home. It would need to be parked on your property. It could not be parked on the street in front of your house.
Okay. And then my other question is, if they're doing it in a park, I think that was, or a public street where we have ordinances that outlaw or prohibit open alcohol, how would that work?
That was a long discussion we had in front of the Liquor Commission about how they would control where the alcohol was served, and they agreed that they would have to provide some sort of barrier. Now, we were hesitant to outline what that barrier would be because it was impossible to determine, should it be a parking lot, should it be a roped off area, but they will have to identify that and be responsible for that for their events.
So that, because they have to notify the city, did you say 10 days prior? So that's when they would identify how that would work, or is it prior to them getting the actual license?
It could vary depending on each event. The way I understood sort of some of these mobile bars, there may be one that would operate maybe every month at a certain location or a certain business in town, perhaps in conjunction with something like an outdoor movie night that certain businesses are sponsoring. Others were private catered events for some of our large corporate companies here in town. Others were something as simple as a wedding reception, and those appeared to change by venue. So they'll just have to identify it for each event.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Sear?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms. Peterson, I just want to make sure we all understand the clear difference between push carts and these food trucks. One of them, I just heard you say it's reservation, correct? So maybe you can tell us a little bit. So I want to be clear. I want to understand exactly the difference between the two.
If you're thinking of sort of the bicycle carts where there might be.
No, the food carts we have like on Main Street.
Okay.
Example. And I know that those are public carts, right?
Right, but they're not. None of them are allowed to sell alcohol.
Okay, so that's one big difference. How many food trucks we're talking about? Do you know?
There was only one mobile bar that approached the Liquor Commission, although we had other inquiries. They just didn't attend the Liquor Commission hearing.
So do you have a recommendation on who would be in charge of the enforcement? Which would it be like community development or finance department? Any suggestions there?
We have a liquor investigator in the police department that generally handles all complaints regarding liquor licenses.
Okay, so who would be issuing the license?
As with all liquor licenses, they would come from the city clerk's office.
City clerk. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Councilmember Graham?
Esquire Peterson, back in 2002, before Christmas, when the council began to address this issue, I think its intent was to make it easier for theatrical facilities to serve alcohol. Can you elaborate just a little bit more on how this is an evolution of where we were in 2002?
Sure, and I think the legal department may have you slightly confused. You have two liquor ordinances on the agenda tonight, and the one that we discussed it was the one that was on consent dealt with basically the Cornstalk Theater, that in 2002 you sponsored that they would be allowed to have 15 events per year. That's now changed, and they host many, many more events than that. And so that was the one we dealt with on consent. Unfortunately, the language under catering is almost identical. So the mobile bar and the one for the theaters were on there. But this one does not relate to the theaters. This one would strictly be the mobile bars.
And nothing to do with movie theaters?
No.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, can we get a motion, anyone, to adopt? Councilman Kelly, seconded by Councilmember Allen. Any other comments, questions? Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Ruckriegel?
Aye.
Okay, that passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
21-233 is an appointment by Mayor Ali to the Downtown Development Corporation with a request to concur of Councilmember Jackson.
This is to replace the new First District council member on the DDC, replacing the former member with the new First District member. Moved by Councilmember Jensen, seconded by Councilmember Allen. Any questions, comments? Please cast your ballots. This is unanimously. Councilmember Ruckriegel?
It'll be unanimous. Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Madam Clerk?
21-234 is a communication from the City Manager and Peoria Fire Chief with a request to receive and file a report regarding the use of the water rescue team since 2018.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you. I'd like to ask Chief Bachman to come to the microphone and just give us a quick update on the report back that he put together here.
Thank you, Manager. Currently, the fire department has a dive team that consists of 17 team members that are trained in underwater and swiftwater and ice rescue operations. Currently, we are the only dive team trained to that level in this area or in this jurisdiction or even near this jurisdiction. However, there are two other agencies that do assist with river incidents in our area, and one that we've worked with quite regularly in the recent past is Fond du Lac Park Police Department and the Chillicothe Fire Department. I thought it would be useful information to go back to 2018 to kind of take a look at the data and see what it shows as far as how many responses we have on the river and what type of responses they were. At this time, I'll note before I get started that the only service on the river the fire department bills for is boat tows, and that's only to non-Peoria residents, and the fee is currently set at $300. In 2018, we had 4 responses to the river, and one of those responses was for a boat tow, and 3 were bridge jumpers. In 2019, I think the report that I sent in showed 19 incidents. Actually, it's 14. There were 5 boat tows, 5 bridge jumpers. One time we investigated an empty john boat floating in the river. Turned out to be a fisherman. Everything was fine. And then another time we assisted law enforcement in their investigation. That was directly called out by Peoria Police Department and Peoria County Sheriff's Department to assist them in a body of water, but not necessarily on the river. In 2020, we had 11 instances that we responded to, 5 bridge jumpers, 4 boat tows, and then we had an overturned boat where we rescued 2 people out of the water. And then again, we assisted in a police investigation in a body of water for the police department and Peoria County Sheriff's Department. Since the beginning of 2021, we've had 5 incidences, and one was searching for a missing person, 2 were for bridge jumpers, 1 boat tow, and then a fatal watercraft accident that we assisted Fond du Lac Park Police in. Our dive team did a recovery operation. So yeah, if you look at the data and go back 3 years, the majority of our calls, if you put together the boat tows and the bridge jumpers that we really respond to, and again, the boat tows is the one we do charge for non-Peoria residences. Those make up the bulk of the calls that we go on every year. And that's pretty much the summary.
Any questions for the chief? Councilmember Graham?
Chief, is this report designed just to edify the council, or are there financial implications for our having this information, this data?
This was a request from Councilman Euler. Back in June, we put forth a request to purchase a new Marine 2, which we use as a dive platform. It also allows us to get in some more of the shallower waters outside the channel, which is pretty expansive. We have a lot of shallow water on the river, so to make it difficult to get into with our rescue boat that has the fire pump on it. So we use it as those 2 reasons, the dive platform and to get into shallower water. So we had a request back in June for that purchase, and Councilman Euler asked for a report back. I believe he was looking for ways that we could recoup some of our costs on some of the expenses, and I thought it would be good to kind of give an overview of what we already do as far as billing, and then to kind of show the data of what we really are responding to the majority of the time. Many of these calls also I was able to track back to the fact that most of them are Peoria residents that we're involved with.
That's very interesting to know, and I know that sometimes we also are benefiting from the help of other police and perhaps fire rescue entities as well. Thank you very much. Councilor Euler is not here, so I felt there was probably a financial aspect to this when he asked for it. And I think the last point you made was a lot of the folks who needed this help were folks who lived in our city. Did I get that correctly?
Yes, sir. So the majority of what I found was that they were folks from our city. There were several where names and addresses were unknown, and there's various reasons for that when you have a river response.
Right.
Sometimes it's a quick response. You scoop them up out of the river, and you deliver them to a dock or the closest place you can to get them the medical attention they need, and then they're whisked off to the hospital. Sometimes when you get on a bridge, the police department already has them in custody. So some of these would include people that are standing on the bridge when we get there. We're able to talk to them, or law enforcement is able to talk to them, and then they're kind of either taken into custody immediately or put in the back of an ambulance and transported immediately.
Thank you, Chief. It's a very good report, and I'm glad Councilor Euler asked for it. Thank you.
Thank you. And with Councilmember Euler's absence, Chief, I would ask that you would follow up with him with this report back, please.
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chief, is the Coast Guard still active in the Peoria area?
Yes, Counselor. They are to a degree. I know that they are an integral part of the July 4th fireworks. A lot of times they don't respond out for boat tows. We have had instances where we were finding it difficult to respond just because of some of our crews being busy with other incidences. And, at nighttime we hate to leave, especially with the boat tows, hate to leave them sitting out in a channel, or you might have a family on a boat where their engine's incapacitated for whatever reason, and you need to get them out of the channel. So the Coast Guard is available on occasion. We do try to have the dispatchers reach out to them when we can. And like I said, we've been working more and more with Fond du Lac Park Police. They seem very willing. So we are getting that help there. So yeah, they are available. DNR also has a boat. It's not technically on the water. I think it's something they drop in once in a while. More of an enforcement agency, but yes.
Thank you. Is there cooperation between you, between the fire department and the Coast Guard and DNR on where one's responsibility begins and the other ends?
As far as emergency response to the river, it's been Peoria Fire Department. East Peoria used to have a boat. They no longer do. Like I said, Fond du Lac Park Police does, and then up the river a ways, Chillicothe. I'm not aware of anybody else on the river.
Yes, I'm speaking of the Coast Guard and the Department of Natural Resources.
Yeah, the Department of Natural Resources, typically, my understanding is we don't typically work with them on the river for emergency incidents. Coast Guard's been involved with kind of policing the river and also with our 4th of July fireworks and helping out in that manner. Same with the DNR. They've been involved with that also and in our meetings. And they're more of a law enforcement capacity on the river.
Okay, I'm just trying to, I remember when, of course, when we didn't have our river rescue, and I think we depended upon the Coast Guard. And so I was just wondering, and I don't know about DNR, but I was just wondering if today there is an understanding among these three agencies as to where responsibilities begin and end. But I think your answer is sufficient for now anyway. Madam Mayor, thank you, Chief. And Madam Mayor, I'll move to receive and file.
Okay. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilman Allen. Councilmember Sear.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick question, comments for our chief. Thank you, Chief, for being here tonight. Diving in the river is a very dangerous occupation. I know we have some firemen that are well trained to do this. It is a very dangerous activity. I think that I know some of them will be eventually be retiring. We'll lose some of them. Chief, do you have any money in the budget for training some of our firemen or anybody would volunteer to for these responsibilities? Thank you.
Currently, for this year, we do not have any money to train any more divers. We do have 17 currently. We're contractually obligated to have 5 per shift, I believe it is. We have a couple more, and then we do have a couple alternates that have most, if not all, of their certifications. But we will need to look in the future, probably to offer another class for people to get their certifications. And you are correct, Counselor, that one of the most dangerous things we do at all is even training in the river. It is a dangerous thing, and one of the things we do stress to our members is safety, because throughout the nation and throughout the year, training accidents happen, and I think that's probably one of the deadliest part about being on a dive team is actually training. It's a very dangerous rescue type operation.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Madam Mayor.
Welcome. All right, we've got a motion on the floor. No more questions, comments. Ask that you cast your ballots, please. Councilmember Ruckriegel?
Aye.
That passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
21-235 is a communication from the City Manager, Treasurer, and Finance Director Comptroller with a request to receive and file the month ended June 30th, 2021 unaudited financial report.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If I could, I'd ask our Finance Director, Jim Scroggins, to come to the microphone for one last time as he gets ready to leave the organization here at the end of the week to discuss the 6-month financial report that we have here.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Thank you, Mr. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Manager. It's a sad day, but it's a good day because what I'm bringing forward to you today, the June 30th month-end financial statements, are probably one of the best financial statements I've brought to you in many years here. I've also included this in this 6-month review, the balance sheets for all the funds. In the past, I've given you basically the change in fund balance, revenues and expenditures. By including the balance sheets, which was in the first group of my first schedule there, this gives you the position of the city by fund for their assets, liabilities, and fund equity. This will also show you what cash, receivables, et cetera is. But I still am going to focus on the first schedule and the second group, which is the change in fund balance. That change in fund balance summary does tie out to each of the balance sheets.
Can you speak up a little bit, Director?
I'm sorry?
Can you speak up just a bit?
Oh, I'll do my best. So the change in fund balance does tie out to the fund balances for each of the balance sheets that were presented in the first section, but I think this gives you a better idea of what's going on. So if we look at the first page under change in fund balance, it starts with the general fund. The beginning balance is the ending fund balance for 2020. As you can see there, that it's approximately $19.4 million is what we're going to anticipate closing 2020 with in the general fund. Remember, this does include reserves for debt service and some police restricted funds. I think our undesignated fund balance is about hang on one second. I can get that for you. It's $9.9 million is what's being projected for the end of 2020, and our goal is approximately $23 million. So we, I think, put approximately $5 million in fund balance last year due to making strong fiscal decisions early and reducing expenditures, and then revenues improving throughout the end of the year. Last year helped us close with the increase in fund balance. But looking at June, the general fund increased approximately $35 million, of which $23 million of that is related to the funds that we received from the federal government. Those funds will be recognized to the extent that they are used during 2021. Any funds that were not used towards that grant money, those revenues will be deferred until they're used in future years. So that's kind of the key areas that I was going to address there. Revenues are currently tracking at about 73% of budget, but that includes the $23 million. Without the $23 million, we are tracking better than budget. We're approximately 51%, and so it's about a 1% in over what we would anticipate on a straight line basis. However, much of that is attributed to our elastic revenues that are growing faster than anticipated. Right now, we're looking at our home rule sales tax are approximately 20% higher than what they were last year at this time. Our state municipal taxes are trending at about 28% higher. And I believe that most of that increase, on top of the economy getting better, is beginning January 1st. We begin receiving sales tax on the internet sales. And our local use tax to date, which is, I think, is through April, has been flat. So that movement from what we were getting from local use tax is now coming in under home rule and state sales tax at a greater clip, because now we're looking at 2.75%. So the other factors are our income tax and PPRT taxes are coming in much higher than anticipated. I think income taxes are currently at about 44% growth over 2019. On the downside, we do have a few areas that we're still trailing. That being gaming revenues are not quite back; they're 25% down over 2019. Parking revenues are still down considerably, and hotel taxes. Those are trailing in the recovery process, and but overall, total revenues across the board, we're looking at about 65% compared to budget, so we're considerably higher on a straight line of 15%, and that probably is a good approximation. We have collected property taxes. I think we were at about a 48% on property tax collections through the first installment, which is higher than it has been previously. So I believe that we're probably getting a lot of first and second installments in some areas with people that have refinanced and have escrowed their accounts. The second part of the last part of the report is expenditures. Our expenditures overall are at about 40%. 48%, but general fund expenditures are tracking at about 40.7% through June. On a straight line basis, again, we would be well ahead of budget, and that's a plus, and that's contributing to the increase in fund balance for the general fund. All other funds seem to be tracking relatively close to budget. And I anticipate that in the next couple months we'll see capital funds start to go out the door at a faster pace, they're trailing a little bit, but we really hit it hard. And it seems like May, June, and then really July, August, September is our big construction time. So other than that, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Director, for closing out with good news. Really good news. And we appreciate your years of commitment and service to the city of Peoria. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions? Comments? Receive and file? Okay. Moved by Councilman Kelly, seconded by Councilmember Greb to receive and file. Other comments, questions? Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Ruckriegel
Aye.
passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
We are at unfinished business. 21-202 is a communication from the city manager and director of public works with a request to approve the low bid of Knapp Concrete Contractors, Inc. in the amount of $424,583.99 and award a contract for the Nebraska corridor upgrade with an additional authorization of $42,416.01 for contingencies, for a total contract award of $467,000.
Councilmember Jackson?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had questions. I remember during our last council meeting, I was told that this contractor was fairly new to the city. I did get an opportunity to talk to the city manager, and he was able to answer some questions with regards to the numbers of employees they anticipate hiring and potentially how many might be minorities. So I thank you, Mr. City Manager, for your help in answering my questions.
Did you have a motion?
Yes. I would like to make a motion that we would accept this bid from Knapp Concrete, as so stated.
Is there a second? Councilman Riggenbach? Any other comments or questions? Councilmember Riggenbach?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would just say I would appreciate all the support again for this project. This is something that was in the CIP for last year that got pushed off because of COVID, and this is such a critical corridor, and especially with the new development that OSF has at the corner of Nebraska and Wisconsin, this will make a connection to the Nebraska and Knoxville, and that will make the nice connection to Nebraska and Wisconsin and the business corridor over there and Glen Oak School. So this is something the neighborhood's been asking for, and I'm thrilled that we're finally being able to move forward with it. So appreciate your support.
Okay, no more questions. Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Ruckriegel?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
We are at new business.
Great. And I'd just like to open new business by recognizing in our chamber audience, we have our new trustee to the Park Board, Trustee Eric Sierra. Raise your hand. Trustee Sierra, thank you for being here. And we also have in our audience our new police chief, Chief Eric Echevarria. Thank you for being here, Chief. We look forward to being at your swearing in on Friday. Okay. And many thanks to the long service of Chief Theobald. Much appreciated. Any other new business, please, Councilmember Allen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate it. Just a couple things. First, I want to go ahead and do just a couple shout outs. There's been a lot of positive things going on in Peoria. I want to shout out a couple of proud Peoria sons, Sean Livingston. He had his camp last week, the Pride of the City camp at Peoria High. It was a great turnout. The week before last, new Pittsburgh Steeler, Kendrick Green, who was an alumni of Peoria High, he hosted a free football camp as well, too, for youth. That was a great turnout, so I definitely want to shout those two gentlemen out for still wanting to give back to their community, although they may not be living in the city of Peoria anymore. I also want to shout out the always a brave Bradley alumni team that is playing in the basketball tournament, or known as the TBT. If you have not been following it, I was at the game last night at the Civic Center. It was a great atmosphere. They got the win. They play again tomorrow at 8 p.m. If you're not familiar with the TBT, the winner of this basketball tournament wins $1 million. That team is anchored by Marcellus Somerville, who is the current CEO of the Friendship House. I'm not going to try to guess his age, but he is still playing at a very high level. I don't know how he's doing it because my knees just hurt watching those guys play. But definitely get out there. Let's pack out the Civic Center. It's definitely a true blessing that we're able to host the TBT in Peoria. And so we definitely need to get a good showing tomorrow so that way we can continue to keep hosting these high tourism events for our community. And then the last shout out that I have is this Saturday, the annual Backpack Peoria event will be going on at the Dream Center from 9 a.m. to noon. If you're not familiar with that event, that is an event where students and their parents can come to the Dream Center and they can get items to start the school year. They will be doing COVID-19 vaccinations. There'll be haircuts available, medical and dental exams, backpacks loaded with school supplies, and then they're also going to give out 750 $10 uniform gift cards while supplies last. So just wanted to go ahead and shout that out as we get ready to prepare for another positive academic year. Thank you.
Great shout outs. Thank you, Councilmember Allen. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, as you all know, next Tuesday night will be National Night Out Against Crime. So I just want to give a shout out to all the neighborhood associations around the city that work so hard to try to get residents involved in making our neighborhoods safe and healthy. So if you're not doing anything, please stop by Martin Luther King Park. I think Green Lawn Neighborhood Association with Ms. Lavetta Ricca, they'll be also hosting their event, and I'm going to try to get around to as many as possible. And just on a second note, I have put in each council member's mailbox an invitation. Myself and trustee, Park District Trustee Alex Sierra, have been talking for some time, and we've decided to host a series of neighborhood tours throughout the First District. Particularly, we would like to invite people who, well, obviously live in the First District, but we also want to invite folks who don't live in the First District because if you don't work or live in the First District, you probably have no idea to some of the challenges residents face in terms of the social and economic ills plaguing our community. So we are going to, and also some of the positives, but we're going to be hosting van tours. We're collaborating with several churches beginning August the 7th through September the 25th on Saturdays, and we'll be meeting at Treewind Park. And obviously we all can't gather together, too many of us as council members, but if you all don't have much on your schedule, come out at 10 a.m. and we're going to meet there, and we've already routed out the tour, we've already routed the route we're going to take, and we just want to raise awareness to the magnitude of poverty in some areas and give you all an opportunity to look at it with the hopes and understanding that as we move forward that we will think about the underserved. I kind of liken it to a neglected child. If a child has been neglected for so long, the consequences are not always good. So my hope is that moving forward that we will develop relationships around the city that will cross cultural and social, economic lines that will be the beginning of something that we can continue and that will be long lasting. So I hope to see you all between August the 7th and September 25th. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Riggenbach.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to thank my colleagues for the vote on the Chodo for Habitat for Humanity, and I saw Leanne Schmidgall, their executive director, here earlier. I'm sorry I didn't. I hope she's listening now because the work Habitat does in our neighborhoods is really powerful, and I think it's. I know in the East Bluff neighborhoods we're just thrilled to have them back. They took a couple years off, did some things in the North Valley, and just the quality of the work that they do is just has really stepped up, and we just are really excited to have a couple new projects again coming into the East Bluff. Without opening a box of tears or anything, I think we'd be really remiss if we didn't just acknowledge all of our employees who have taken the early retirement incentive. And we've called out Director Black, Mr. Scroggins, Interim Chief Theobald. These guys, these three names have 28 years each, plus, I believe, some of them. So the institutional knowledge that has carried this institution is just amazing, and we just can't express enough how important they have, the role they have played in our city for all these years, and thank them from the bottom of our hearts. And there's many in Public Works and ECC and throughout the city, so I don't want to exclude anybody. Just know that this council appreciates the efforts that you've put forward, and as we saw with Joe Doolin and Kaylee Dre, we have some great employees here, and the Appreciate Peoria week taking place right now is just a great way to highlight that. So hats off to those of you that are retiring. We appreciate your efforts, and for those of you still here, we need you, and we're going to do our best to empower you the best we can. So thank you.
Councilmember Sear.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to say thank you also to my colleague, Councilman Riggenbach. That was very, very well said. On a personal note, I was wanting to say to our city manager, I've been in this chair 4.5 years or so now, and I just wanted to say thank you also to our Director of Finance, Jim Scrogging, and our Director of Community Development, Ross Black. These gentlemen, and all of them, as my colleague said, they're all very, very important for me. The last 4.5 years, they are always very, very professional, and they always gave me a lot of time. We all know how steep the learning curve here is in this chair, so I just want to personally thank both of them also, and congratulate them on their career, and good luck in retirement or semi-retirement. Thank you very much, gentlemen, Jim Scroggins and Ross Black.
Well said. Thank you. There's no more new business. Madam Clerk?
We are at citizens' opportunity to address the city council, and I believe we have one card.
Okay, Ms. Lavetta Ricca. It's always good to see you, Ms. Ricca. Ms. Lavetta.
Hi, Lavetta Ricca, President of Old Town South Neighborhood Association. I came tonight to thank Ross Black for everything he's done for me, my neighborhood, and my city. I think over his 29 years of working with neighborhoods and my 50 years, we've probably attended hundreds of meetings together, and he's always put forward his best. So I want to thank him. I hate goodbyes, but I have to say goodbye, and hopefully he has a wonderful, wonderful retirement. And I want to say to you, I didn't come to say this, but since my phone went off, I have to tell you that I have a granddaughter who calls me every night, and she says, "Hi, my sweet little apple dumpling. How are you feeling tonight?" And even if I feel lousy, I have to smile and say to her, "Good, I feel good." So that's why I forgot to turn my phone off, and I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that.
It was Andy Griffin, I think.
Yeah. And then another thing I want to say is, even though it's not millions of dollars, our firehouse on the corner of Western and Howard is coming along. The plumbers have been there for a couple weeks, and all the pipes are sticking up. And even though it's small beans to everything else to the south side, it's a wonderful, wonderful feeling to us to see something new and bright and shiny coming along. It's been a long, long time before we've seen something new being built in our area, and we're going to appreciate it. We always appreciated the firemen, no matter where they were, but this new building is really going to put a shine on us. So I watch it. Every day I have somebody take me by, and all the plumbing pipes are sticking up now, so I know it's getting closer and closer. So thank you very much for everything.
Thank you, Ms. Lavetta. Madam Clerk.
We are at executive session, and I do not believe we have one, so then we are at adjournment.
Can I get a motion to adjourn? Everybody's hands go up. Councilmember Jensen, seconded by Councilmember Sear. Please cast your ballots. Councilmember Ruckriegel? Is he gone? Okay. We're adjourned. Thank you.